Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulil kareem. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I'd like to go back to a theme that I covered maybe in the second talk that I gave recently, a few nights ago, which was about storytelling in a contemporary context. And in that regard, I'd like to take a story from the Abbasid dynasty, from the time of Haroon Rashid. And really the Abbasid dynasty, the Abbasid caliphate in general, and particularly the caliphate of Haroon Rashid, is considered to be the glory days of Islam, of the Islamic empire. And so at that time, at the time of Haroon Rashid, the Dar al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom of Baghdad, was really flourishing. And Haroon Rashid was considered to be a very enlightened ruler of the Abbasids. So one day he couldn't sleep, this Haroon Rashid couldn't sleep, and he called for his favorites, one of his court poets and storytellers, and his name was Al-Asmai. And he said, "Call Asmai for me, he'll help me to put me to sleep with a nice story." So he called Al-Asmai. And Asmai came, and he said, Asmai, could you tell me, recite some story about the verses that women compose and recite? And that's a very common thing, including in the Pashtun culture, which the current rulers of Afghanistan hail from mostly, not all of them, but mostly they hail from the Pashtun ethnic group in Afghanistan. And particularly amongst Pashtun women, there's a tradition of composing and reciting verses known as tapas, couplets. So that's not an unusual thing. Amongst it's very usual for women to compose and to recite poetry. So that's something I'll come on to again. And so Asmai said, I know lots of stories about women composing verses, but there's one in particular, O Commander of the Faithful, that I would like to mention to you. And it was when I was in Basra that one day I was walking around Basra, and the port city of Iraq, of course. And I was looking, it was middle of the day, it was very hot, and I was looking for a nice cool place, and I found a nice bench, and the water had been sprinkled onto the ground, and there was a lovely smell emanating from that earth where the water had been sprinkled on the ground. And I sat on that bench, and I was about to lay down to have a nice siesta, when there was a latticed window just nearby. And I heard the sound of some young ladies and the fragrance of musk coming out of that window. And then there were three girls who were talking amongst themselves. And they were saying, "Look, let's have a competition. And let's see who can compose the best verse. And let's put down 300 dinars, 100 dinars each. 100 gold pieces each, and whoever composes the best verse will get all 300 dinars. So they said, yes, what a good idea. So they started having that competition. And then the eldest, they said to the eldest, you go first. And she recited a poem. Would he come to my bed during sleep, 'twas delight, but a visit on wake were delightsome a sight. And then after her, the second composed a poem and recited a poem, and they just, spontaneously. And the second one said, naught came to salute me in sleep save his shade, but welcome, fair welcome, I cried to the sprite. Sprite being spirit in poetic language. And then, for the sake of rhyme, of course. And then the youngest one said, my soul and my folk I engage for the youth, musk-scented I see in my bed every night. And so, of course, Asmai was also a poet, so not to be outdone. And she befares her verse has grace, the thing is complete in every case, he recited just on the spur of the moment. Then he was about to go away because he thought, I don't want to cramp the style of these young ladies, when a servant came out from the house and said, no, they're asking you please to stay seated. So when he sat down again, the servant gave a note to Asmai, and it was written in the most beautiful Arabic characters by the young ladies, obviously, with very straight alifs and round-bellied ha's and rounded wows. These are letters of the alphabet, so in very, very nice calligraphy. And what they had written was that we would like to ask the Sheikh, may Allah lengthen his days, to know that we are three maidens, three sisters, sitting in friendly conversation, and we have laid down each 100 dinars, conditioning that whoever recites the goodliest and sweetest couplet shall have the whole 300 dinars, and we would like you to be the umpire of our little friendly competition. So he said, yes, of course I will, but could you give me some notepaper and some ink and a pen? And so they brought that immediately from the house, because it was ready in the house. And then he wrote on that paper, he wrote this verse. They talked of three beauties whose converse was quite like the talk of a man with experience dight. Three maidens who borrowed the moon of the dawn, making hearts of their lovers in sorriest plight. They were hidden from eyes of the prior and spy, who slept in their modesty, more not affright. So they opened whatever lay hid in their hearts, and in frolicsome fun began verse to indite. Quoth one fair coquette with her amorous grace, whose teeth for the sweet of her speech flashed bright. Would he come to my bed during sleep, 'twere delight, but a visit on wake were delightsome sight. That was the first verse. When she ended her verse, by her smiling was gilt, and the second gan singing as nightingale might. Naught came to salute me in sleep save his shade, but welcome, fair welcome, I cried to the sprite. That was the second verse, recited by the second sister. But the third I preferred, for she said in reply, with expression most apposite, exquisite, my soul and my folk I engage for the youth musk-scented I see in my bed every night. So when I considered their words to decide, and not make me the mock of thy cynical wight, I pronounced for the youngest, declaring her verse of all verses be that which is nearest the right. So then he wrote that on the piece of paper, and he gave it to the servant girl, who took it inside. And then there were sounds of delight coming from inside the house, that, oh, this is so wonderful, and they were sort of very, very happy to read what Al-Asmai had written. And then he was about to go away, because again, he didn't want to, cramp the style of the young ladies. And so the servant girl said, no, please sit down. And sit down, Asmai. And so he said, how do you know Asmai, for goodness sake? And then they said, well, we've never seen you before, but we can recognize you from your poetry. You're a very famous poet. And so they were very thrilled that Al-Asmai, it would be sort of like as if, I don't know, who, Bob Dylan or somebody was, on your doorstep. Everybody would be thrilled, wouldn't they? Especially me. So anyway, so then, they came out. One of them came out, and obviously in very modest clothing, and offered some fruit and offered some sweetmeats to Asmai, because he was an honored guest. And then said, can you just tell me why you no, sorry, she had with her the 300 the 300 dinars, and she said, I won that because you decided that my poem was the best, and I would like to give it to you because you're so she decided to give it to him. So anyway, as you can see, I think the the relevance of this verse to the country that I mentioned, where I spent most of my working life. And that's how one can construct a story, perhaps a sort of more modern story, about relevant to current situation, but also containing a very potent message. And I don't think I have to rub it in by repeating it anymore. The message is very clear. وآخر الدعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.